Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This week we have a new tutorial, this time on Beju and his hypnotic hard industrial techno. Be sure to check the project file in the link in the description if you want it. Thank you so much for supporting the channel by liking, commenting, subscribing, and here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the kick as usual, and I've used my usual go-to framework for the kick, so you can check my tutorial if you want. So basically many layers and lots of distortion to this one, of course, for this genre. So I'm gonna just deep dive quickly on the group processing because this is really important and this is really what makes the sound. So this is what the kick looks like at first. Then there's a bit of EQ when I were to audio, but basically without all the processing, it's more like a 909 thing. So that's why this step is really important. I'm gonna keep it to the different layers, but basically what makes the sound is really distortion. So here, lots of saturation. You really create that nasty distortion. After that, to control that distortion, you really need to EQ, and especially you usually have lots of resonances around 300 Hertz. So that's why I EQ like this. I have to balance back frequencies to add a bit more lows, a bit more high end. Also, I like to use a slight amp to put back forward the transient, and also an EQ3 with a bit more high end. Usually it works. And here I have also a limiter to make the thing compressed, a little tonal balance at the end. That's pretty much it for the group processing. So really the important is the distortion and the EQ right after it. I also a slight compression here, I guess. And that's pretty much it for group processing. So if I go into the different layers, I've used as the main layer this kick, which is basically a 9-line, but it's already kind of distorted. So this sample is from Ableton. It's very nice because you still have a bit of dynamic and it's very clean. So you can use it as the main layer, already distorting it more. Just a slight EQ. I've added on top of that a kind of top kick. So if I put back the group processing, this is something a bit more heavy. So I create some character thanks to these amps. So I just tag 2 amps with different modes. This is also a sample from Ableton. And here basically I'm creating a kind of industrial feeling with that layer. Also a bit of punch with some transients. I then have grit layer. Here it's for the mid range. I think it's a kick layer already kind of industrial that I took. I pitch it down to create something very nasty. I add even more character and distortion with the heavy amp. And then I just want to keep that for my kick. Next, I have a layer of distortion. So it adds a bit of that offbeat and also some character also in the mids. So again, it's just an example with some distortion and then some EQ. So I think at first this was like a very simple kick, maybe from Ableton also. And then I have this. So already some punch, already some offbeats. Now I need some sub and a rumble. So that's what I did here. And I usually do this. So I have a layer with a 16th pattern from a kick. So this was a kick sample. It's just a punch at first. And then I'm just distorting it and putting some EQ. And usually I withdraw transients. So this is going to really bring the drive to the kick and to the rumble. And I have a sidechain, so it's really something very compressed. And then this one is a rumble. Again, I took this kick. I have put a convolution reverb with 100% wet. I put an amp. I think it was in heavy mode with lots of bass like this. And then I just render it to audio and I took the part of the sample that I liked better. And so without here the EQ, this is basically just some distortion, very compressed distortion, and here just keeping the sub. So also with that, it really gives more character, because at first you see it was just sub like this. And so altogether, I create this kick. Then I just render it to audio. I put back just a bit of top kick here. Just a top kick sample like this. And then some EQ. So really I had to put back lots of high end. I've also added an Oxford inflator with a slight effect. Overall balance. And just the last end clipping. And this is my kick. So I'm using it like this. Sometimes I make some little variations like this. And I've also added a snare kind of kick, top kick on top of it sometimes. So here, nothing special. I just took hard snare from KSHMR, some EQ to withdraw the low end, and just a slight reverb. And that's it for my kick. So next I have my drums. So for the drums, for this style, basically you can use some 909 samples. And what you can do really to get the industrial vibe is, again, adding lots of distortion. It's almost like those drums are almost some noise, but this noise with some dynamic, with some punch. So I've created different drums here. Here I have this hi-hat. So for this, it's just a sample, and I took only like a small part to give lots of drive. It's very repetitive, but it gives speed to the kick. And I just EQ so that it's really something like noisy. Here it was too resonating. So here just a sample, just some sidechaining, nothing special. Sometimes I like to throw a sample that fits to the track. And here I just made a bit more sound design. So I took a hat sample that was very sharp and very noisy in the high end. Again, I make sure it's a bit muffled through EQ, because I think overall balance in EQ frequency in Bejout's track is very more in the mids, and usually it's more give like a dark vibe. So that's why I'm using those overdrive that kind of creates more noise and distortion, of course. And it brings back some punch and some strength in the mid-range. Then I just have reverb, a bit more with the drum bass, and then it's just EQing the proper way. And then I sidechain. So I have this very straightforward open hat. I have those driving hi-hats, and then I have another open hat, which is more driving in between the two of them. So this one's a sample, which is very noisy. And again, it's about EQing to make it a bit more darker. And just a EQ, sidechain again. I have another hi-hat. This one again, give some drive. This is the same sample as this one, and I think I use the same effect chain. So the two other drives, EQ, drum bass, and a reverb and sidechain. Here just make variation also with the pitch. So you can see the original sample is pitched up to make it more quick. Here I'm using the faders. It's a kind of compression to make the sound more sharp, but then I use it longer, like I have a longer tail. It's a way to make a bit of variation in the intro. I may have also a bit of front velocity in the hi-hats here. So you can check here. This one is more higher in volume than the second one. So it creates also some groove. And that's pretty much it for the drums. Then just overall balance EQ, and that's it. And here I have a snare, and it's something noisy. So here I have two layers. One layer is for the punch. So this is just a sample here to give that transient, that punch. So I used a snare sample like this, something very simple. Just again, lots of saturation, drum bass, and I use this as the compression just to make it like very punchy. And then I have this snare layer, and this one is more like complex. I think I took back the processing from my kick, but basically this is just a clap at first. And I create some noise again with saturation of the... Here some saturation, first saturation, and then huge saturation from the trash here. So Nasty Boy preset, and it creates that movement and that noisy thing as a tail. So this is basically my transient, and this is tail for the snare. Then it's just EQ, a bit more saturation, and big reverb to create that ambience and feeling. And that's it for my drums. So I just have a last variation here, because when I didn't keep the punch here when I put an auto filter on my kick. So basically cutting the lows, because it was feeling a bit weird. It was smoother if I withdraw that punch. Also, I have added some return channels reverb here to sweep, homemade sweep. So I have a huge reverb on my channel, and it's sidechain EQ'd, and this is what I use also for my transitions. So next I have my melody. So for my melody, creating some dark kind of melancholic vibe. This is usually what I think Beju is doing. So it's really something a bit repetitive with some dark character. So you can use any scale, like a minor scale or Phrygian scale. This would usually work. So here I think I took like F, maybe. I have to check, but yeah, I think it was a F minor scale. I just threw down some notes. So you can see the way my melodies, it's always the same. I start just to throw a bit of a random in the scale with some rhythm that I like, and then I just duplicate. So you can see here, it's exactly the same start between those two bars. And what I do is I just make a slight variation on one note or on one length, or also some on the velocity. And that way you can create something that's going to be catchy. So here, this is the same pattern, same pattern, same pattern. Then you can add like a slight variation also at the end of 8 bar or 4 bar. And also here added the same kind of movement and pattern, but with some 1 octave above. So I took back the melody from here, I paste it here, and again I just move some notes. I add some double notes sometimes, and this is a good way actually to make some melody and to make something catchy. It has to be repetitive so that the brain can anticipate what's coming after, but it also has to have a little surprise, and that's why you have to change some of the notes. And if you want to be more dark, more melancholic, usually you have to stay within 2 or 3 notes to the maximum, or you can change the octave but keep the same note. And this is usually a good way to do this. So to make the sound design of this, I took like a plug sound, like actually the first plug sound from Serum. And it usually works because you have lots of movement coming from the delay. And I'm creating more like character again with some saturation and also with the OTT. I'll show you. So without the effect, just something like this, but it's going to be much stronger thanks to first the amp, second the OTT that brings really some compression, and really it can bring any kind of lead to be very strong and powerful. And then I have also a huge reverb that creates that dark, noisy atmosphere. So I did the same processing for that lower frequency melody and this higher frequency melody, and I just stack one another here, and I make some movement here for the kind of outro for this track sketch here with the auto filter. I have also some sidechain, which is important, and usually you have to control that area in the mids, especially here around 1K. Usually have some resonances that you can cut. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this melody. I have then just in the intro some, which is here, a choir sample. Again, if I took it here, I thought it was just a bit too much in your face, and I wanted something more in the background, so it was just to fill up the intro. So I'm using just 2 notes in the scale. What you can do to see the scale is you can just see here either the note, or you can place a spectrum here and basically analyze the sample and see what notes it is. And you can check that way if it's in the scale of your track or not. And then I'm just again creating more character with some amp, and I'm creating the kind of pad or Atmo in the background because of the reverb. It automatically places more in the background as something like a layer, and then it's my track rather than a lead or something that's in your face. Also, a little bit of delay, actually quite a lot of delay, because I think it creates some movement, and since it's in the background, it's not a lead, it's not a problem that it's like 50% of delay. And then some sidechain, quite a heavy sidechain, but I keep a bit of high end because I was feeling it was a bit too weird if I do a straight sidechain. So then I have a pad. This pad is kind of melancholic vibe. So I took only like 2 notes, as you can see in the scale, and maybe 3 here, but quite steady, low pace melody. Again, throwing down some melodies using the same note as the main lead melody. And here is a preset from Ableton that I bring slowly here in the intro. And I have also a second layer, which is 1 octave above, and it's the same notes. Again, same kind of movement and variation that I have here in this track. I also bring it back after with some movement every 8 bar. And basically it's the same kind of processing. So just some character with the amp, some compression with the OTT, and then just EQing, reverb, delay, sidechain, which is like my go-to processing for this type of stuff. And that's pretty much it for the harmonics here. So then I have a screech, which I use here. So just 1 note screech here in the key of the track. So to do that, I took back my screech that I made for the carve track a while ago. And this is basically some saw wave shapes with a bit of noise, something very with lots of transients, so very short envelope, and some movement here with an LFO on the filter, and some movement also on the coarse pitch, so basically the pitch of the sound. So here it's really moving to that rate, and it's bringing some movement when it plays. And I also have this arpeggiator, which is actually the best tool for some screeches. And here again, just building some power with the amps, with the OTT, and then just bringing all in the same vibe and same room with those reverb, delay, and sidechain. And I have also underneath the noise that I made for Carve. So I kind of recycle those sounds, but they were matching well together. So it brings something more in the background. So this is just some MIDI pattern like this, some variation in the length, and here is just some noise that is heavily distorted through an heavy amp. So, and I also made lots of variation here in the EQ, and it creates something lively like this. And I do the same kind of thing here, the same patch, but just with some different frequency automation here. So it's basically just some noise with lots of reverb, and then it's like EQ and sidechain. And that's pretty much it for this noise. And finally, I have just two effects here for my drop, just a slight impact like this, and a sweep here for my transition. So as you can see, there's no like very complex sound designing. I just took some very simple sound, but basically what you need to do is really create some catchy patterns, some groovy drums, and then you just create the distortion and the noise to really give that industrial vibe. So that's it for this tutorial, guys. Thank you for the support to the channel. I see you in the next one.